Nike, Visa, Amazon, Intuit, now Adobe. All of those companies stayed relevant over time. That's hard. It's really, really hard to stay relevant over decades. Having experienced all of those companies, what's the key to that?
You have to disrupt yourself. And every single one of those brands has done it. This belief that software is going to be eaten by AI, which I don't believe. AI is an absolute tailwind for software. And for those of us who've lived the .com era, that was hard. We got through it. We were better for it. You do have to disrupt yourself. I truly believe in that. Not just the company you're in, but yourself. That is across all of these brands.
Lara, welcome to the CMO Podcast. Hey, we are deep into the Girl Scout cookie selling season, and my local grocery store in Coronado is a center for it. There's always Girl Scouts with their tables and their displays and their friendly faces, and I always buy way too many. But I've noticed that you're a national sponsor of the 2026 Girl Scout cookie program, which, by the way, as I was researching this, does over $1 billion a year. It's a big brand.
Yeah, the commerce they're running is incredible, and we're just thrilled to support them as they, learn how to market using our products.
Now, I noticed that also you do a lot of partnerships, of course, as a company of a wide range of clients. But one that I know you're really proud of is the work you're doing with the NFL. So let's stick with the kind of partnerships. So could you talk a bit about that work? What is special about it? Why you're really jazzed by it? And what it's like to work for the NFL? It must be incredible.
Yeah. So we do have many partnerships. It is a great way for us to tap into the culture, passion points that people have, our customers have. And we do have such a broad range of customers. We serve individuals to students to creative professionals, to next generation creative professionals, all the way to enterprises. And with NFL, we're not only going to fans who are enthusiastic about the NFL, but we're also going and supporting the NFL, an enterprise. And there are very few Fortune 500 companies that, don't have our software or use our applications. With the NFL, they have the desire of going and being uber connected to their fan base. So we're able to help power connecting in a personalized fashion, connecting through their personalized fan experiences through our software. And then we can, with and through that, connect with our customers and, engage them. We have Express, which is our product that allows you to do very unique designs, however you want them, post to social. And in the case of working with the NFL, they've given us proprietary NFL designs that you can use to create a specialized fan experience. And with Firefly, which is our proprietary model that allows you to customize, what you want in your mind's eye and bring it to life. And it's commercially viable in terms of it's absolutely not trained on other people's data. It's only credentialed in that respect. That's another thing that you can use Firefly to create and work with NFL to, create great designs. And we had a fun helmet design effort that we did just recently with the NFL, being in our backyard in San Francisco. Here, we had the Super Bowl here just recently, and so that was pretty terrific.
So, are you a fan of the 49ers?
I always say I love all my NFL football teams, being a NFL partner writ large. But I do have a special liking for the 49ers. I've lived in San Francisco long enough to like them. I am from Seattle, so I do have some love for the Seahawks. I do have a little 12th man in me. Yeah.
Oh, so you're happy this year. Amazing team. Amazing. Yeah.
It was really fun. It was great to see them win and see that happen, and what I think of as my home stadium now, Levi's. Yeah.
You've been at Adobe now a little bit over a year. I remember when you made that transition, I think I ran into you at the summit around the time you were coming on board. And I was interviewing Emily Silver at Dick's at the time. So, by the way, we re-released that episode recently in honor of the Olympics. So
it's great.
So
great.
You've been there about a year. Do you feel like, Lara, you're a more creative person now after this year?
That is such a great question. Creativity is so, I think, important to the human race. And we all are creative. do I think I'm more creative? Hopefully, I feel like I've had some amount of creativity in my entire life. But I will say that when you hang out in an environment with everybody who's so customer obsessed, making sure that we deliver for that broad range of customers that, is from individuals all the way to enterprises, you do get excited. And, I'm very lucky. I have a studio team that's best in class. They're using our software. We call it Adobe on Adobe. It allows us to give feedback to the engineers that are creating the software. And I don't know if I'm more creative, but I certainly love being around incredible creative folks all day long and the creativity that they output.
Yeah, I've been in and out of your company many times actually since I left P&G, and you can feel it. You can feel it in the culture. You can feel it in your people. You can feel it when you're with them. And I'm going to talk about in a minute why you came here, but every time I've been there, I feel happy.
Yeah, it is. I've described it. There's still, the brand is a vessel that we can put more meaning into. But the foundation of it is so optimistic and saturated, bold colors. It's everything that, makes you want to go outside and smile. And that's what I love about it.
Well, let's look back for a minute before we talk more about Adobe and what you're up to there. When I ran into you about a year ago, you were just coming out of Intuit after 6 years as CMO, where your revenue tripled. By the way, in your tenure there,
Yes.
your stock price also tripled. Now, I know there was an acquisition or two in there, but I'd like you to talk a bit about that run. And this is not a new brand. I mean, you grew that brand at sort of startup rates, and it's a very established brand with its sub brands, of course, which it's gathered over the years. But talk a bit about that experience and what you learned about growing a venerable tech brand at these remarkable rates.
And what a wonderful experience. What a great company. I was there for 6 years. And when I started, there was essentially QuickBooks and TurboTax and Mint, which was a personal finance application. And we did buy Credit Karma and we did buy MailChimp during that time. And for me, it was, the beautiful task, ambition of really codifying and punching above our weight and bringing to life this brand that had existed for almost, over 40 years. During the time I was there, we went over 40 years. But Intuit had not been put into Intuit per se. And that connection of a branded house and the power of the Uber brand, the parent brand with sub brands had not been brought to life. And so that was, such a great experience for me because you're working horizontally across an organization to bring people along and understand the power that building equity into a master brand can have and the sub brands. And that I feel really good about having accomplished that during my time, updating the entire brand equity meaning and then going to market with a true branded house and even doing an Intuit Dome deal in order to really codify the stature of a brand that could be in the tapestry of culture and additionally tap into what that is a very tech forward stadium. So giving a nod to the tech innovation that is the backbone of the company. One thing I'll say during my time there, what I think I got the savviest I've ever been on and, have had this in my history, my long history doing marketing and general management, but is the idea that it really is all about the customer. It's all about the customer. And if we're serving the customer needs and deeply understand them and working backward from the customer, we'll be fine. It doesn't mean you can't stand up anything that they don't know that they want and desire and need. That's still our jobs, but you can do that in a way that taps into what they deeply are wired to care about or that they should care about and they don't today.
Yeah, very customer-centric culture. I've been in and out of that company as well.
Yeah.
It's, you've also, our jobs are so much bigger than communications, but communications is a part of it. I noticed in Intuit in the time you were there, the advertising/communication just got more creative, more funny, more entertaining, more interesting. So tell us a bit about that journey.
Yeah, it's easy if you're a tech brand to get very serious or technical. And, when I just talk about humans at the end of it, you, there's people are living their day-to-day lives. And, especially when you're in Silicon Valley and in the Bay Area, like I am and have been, you can get caught up in what we may talk like every day. But that's not how, quote unquote, normal people go about their lives. And what I love about what Intuit's done, Amazon, Visa, these are all brands I've had the good fortune of working for, Nike, Gap, is you don't forget that human nature. I think with Adobe, if you've been in marketing, if you've been at a Fortune 500 company, you've been exposed to Adobe, and you are often surprised depending on how you first interacted with the brand. In my case, it was on the enterprise side. You realize, gosh, that's the Photoshop brand. Wow, Acrobat, PDFs that I've known forever. This is all Adobe. And the brand that I came into contact with through driving my business efficiently, again, on the enterprise side, there's this massive opportunity to shape this brand even more going forward. And I've loved it as a customer. Now I get the chance to actually go in the four walls and shape it for the next tranche of growth. And there's something I love personally about going in and taking a brand that's existed and, really valuing its history, its DNA, its past, but then taking it forward. And in the case of Adobe, when I walked in as just an example, we had a mission that was changing the world through personalized digital experiences, which made sense. But I knew that in this next tranche of growth, we'd have to truly say, what is going to get our people out of bed and energized as they go into the next day, as they go into the next year, the next decade? And what do we stand for? What gives us the legs to grow? And that was really, for me, going in and saying to my boss, the CEO of the company, Shantanu, saying, can we really look at this mission? It's like, we haven't changed it for 15 years. We've thought about it, but it's a hard task. And so in that case, what I did was worked on a whole plan to get people internally to work on it with me and with my team and the corporate strategy team. And we did move to a new mission of empowering everyone to create. And, that for me, that's a long way of saying that's what brought me to Adobe, is I knew I could set it up for the next chapter while, understanding our past, but moving forward. And, what I would say too is the mission of empowering everyone to create, it has such legs because it's extensible, but it's simple. It can be creating a company, creating a campaign, or creating an image, or creating a PDF, or doing an analysis. So the breadth of what it can stand for, but still energizing to people, knowing that I could do that, come in and help the company just as the first step is part of what energized me to come here.
It's super simple, and it is at the core who Adobe is and why they're here and what makes them different.
Yeah.
Could you talk a bit about that, Lara? Because it's, refreshing a mission on any organization of any size is never a cavalier project, right?
It is not.
And you were year one in your role, coming in from the outside, and it sounds like something you're very proud of. It sounds like it's catching. It sounds like you involved a lot of people. But could you talk a bit more about how you approach that? Because I think there's rich learning in it.
So first of all, it is not for the faint of heart. If coming in from the outside, you have to be really thoughtful if you're going to go in and change a mission. When I started at Intuit, the mission was powering prosperity. And that was great. Same idea, very significant in terms of what it could stand for, heritage, going back to the founder. You have to be really careful when you embark on something like that. But in this case, since the years before, going into a whole new space in the marketplace of going for students and everyday people who can just want to create. And we have our product Express, and understanding that these brands, Acrobat, are attached to Adobe. How the idea that our mission statement didn't necessarily give us the breadth and room to run within that breadth. This was really going to be required for me to energize a studio team, energize the best marketers on the planet. It became a bit of a mission for me in order to have then all of the work that goes underneath that, the taxonomy of the corporate strategy, what that anchors up to, the idea that you could actually then be really clear about the value prop of each of those sub-brands that then ladders to ultimately a mission statement. For me, it was so important. So, got some traction with my boss to do that, and then started to pull in the rest of the executive team and then employees across key parts of the company, as well as very senior leaders, and went on that journey knowing, I had a kind of a semblance of the zip code of what it could be, but then getting that support as I went around. Hard to do that in the first year, but really important because it allows for the foundation when you're building those brands and go-to-market strategies going forward. And so that's, a down payment for the future. Of course, parallel pathing all of the things we need to do. You have to go to market. You have to be driving the business both in the short, mid, and long term, but doing that with now having sort of something out ahead to launch toward.
So 1 year into the job, you're proud of the work you've done in the mission. It sounds like it's caught. Anything else you're particularly proud of in this year as you look back on it? And the second part of that is, has anything been more challenging or difficult than you perhaps expected?
Great questions. So very proud of that mission. Unveiled it at our company kickoff in December. And just great response. People are loving it. It's getting traction when people who you don't know are slacking you, emailing you, saying how proud they are to be part of the company, that this is why they joined originally, whether that was 17 years ago or 2 years ago. So that's one piece of it. It also gives you credibility as you're moving through the organization and having a point of view, but also respecting what the company's about. This is a really interesting time for the world and for software. We have been able to maintain a steadfastness, a care about the customers, and a conviction to do what's right, while understanding, with Gen AI and LLMs, the world is changing and we have to innovate. So we have been innovating at a rapid pace. And as I mentioned, my team, the whole marketing organization, is Adobe on Adobe. We call it customer zero, which I guess is patient zero for those of you who are watching Pitt these days. But it's very... we are trying our software. We're co-creating the software. We are giving feedback to product, to the engineers in real time. I have engineers on my team. We have creative technologists, and we're out inventing the future, innovating with LLM. So, we've got a myriad of products from our brand Concierge, which is agentic AI, where you can conversationally talk to a website effectively to find out which product is best for you. That's on adobe.com today. We have our LLM optimizer, which is, in a world of LLMs, search is not just search. It's SEO and GEO. And you can wake up tomorrow and your search volume has dropped off. And where did it go? And now we have LLM optimizer to help you understand where your customers are finding out about you. And increasingly, that isn't on necessarily your typical search. So our teams are co-creating that and giving feedback in real time. And that's just a gift. I've called it eating your own dog food in the past. Shantanu likes to call it drinking your own champagne. I like that as well. So, there's a lot to love about keeping a team energized while you're innovating in such a disruptive seismic shift time.
This idea of trying things out first internally before you go to external clients, customer zero, it's such a good one.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes me wonder why I don't hear that more from other companies I talk to and other CMOs. So could you go a little bit deeper into what is it about your culture that makes that work? And you've already told a few stories about what you're doing there, but is there one that really stands out as a especially powerful one that you've discovered?
Yeah, there's definitely something in the Adobe culture of try the product, use it.
Yeah.
Every surface we have, whether it's, our internal screens, digital screens throughout the offices or our intranet, it's always give me product feedback. It's everywhere. So it's in the DNA. And I think it speaks a lot for the company. The fact of the matter is, our founders and our executive team, Shantanu Narayan, the CEO included, they're product enthusiastic folks at their heart, and they deeply care about the technology that powers it and the products that are offered. And when we started, it was all about power and precision, and that still is in the DNA. That just flows to the customer base, and it only makes us better. When I go and talk to customers in our customer experience center, as an example, I can tell them firsthand what it's like to use our products. And one great example, and one that I'm greatly proud about, is we have our Gen Studio, which is effectively how we think about in a more automated fashion and using AI and now Gen AI, from ideation to creating assets to the management of assets to pushing them out in real time, optimizing in real time, and then feeding that back in to optimize, especially at the bottom of the funnel and the performance measure. We have Gen Studio for performance marketing with Meta, Snap, and so many others. We using that against, my customer audiences, I can give feedback right away on what part of that, what we call the content supply chain, is working and not. So that is in the DNA. It is deeply embedded in everything we do. What I would say is that is a point of difference for us when we're talking to customers. I can't stand up and talk about selling a product if I haven't, it's better if I've tried it.
Yep.
So that when you're very customer back, when you care about your customer problems, you fall in love with those problems, offer up solutions. For me to say, I'm using this, and here's what, works incredibly well. And here's what's, hey, we're kind of tweaking. In fact, we'd love your feedback. You can co-create it with us. That is extremely, extremely powerful. The one also thing I would say is, as we go through this LLM journey and conversational interfaces really take over, agentic AI takes over, there's nothing that tech is going to do without the change management, and that takes humans. So the number one question we get in these customer experience sessions is, how do I get my teams to pick this up? Getting the teams to pick it up and the change management that is involved. Like, I can talk to that. I have creatives that have been here so long because I love the company, and I have the same opportunities, and it's all about, that's a whole nother discussion, but it's like getting the people who are psyched about the change, willing to try, and using them as the catalysts, and having them go on the journey and take others with them.
Let's stay with that for a minute, Lara, because I think it's very powerful. Everybody having the show is talking about how to improve their organizations through smart use of AI. And we hear the range of people on the spectrum. Obviously, you're at the heart of that with your company.
Yeah.
So, and you're talking to other CMOs as your customers and clients. So you have a really interesting perspective on that. So could you talk a bit about, from your personal experience and from your work with customers and clients, it is a change management process, but what have you learned from your experience? What have you learned from the best CMOs you talk to? I had Don on from Qualcomm a few months ago.
Yeah.
He talked
Big
beautifully
customer.
about
Yeah.
that change process
Yeah.
at Qualcomm. And it was very easy to follow, very intuitive, very effective. So I'd just like to let you have the microphone for a minute to talk about what you learned about this change experience to really, be agile, curious, and make this work to your advantage.
Again, I feel a personal commitment to be the consummate, most effective, world-class, modern marketing, agile organization in the world. That is paramount to us as Adobe to win and to showcase to our customers, especially on the enterprise side, that we can do this. So I take it very personally. Do I think we're perfect at it? No. Is it a journey? Yes. Now, are you always reinventing because things are changing so rapidly? Yes. It's interesting though. I would argue we've been on this change for a long time because when we started talking about 360 marketing and, not thinking about one channel on its own, we actually started to go this route. And we thought about teams of teams. We thought about not being verticalized. I could argue the CPG model from yesteryear that you remember, Jim, and lived is you had the brand manager was the hub of the wheel, and they worked with all the spokes of the wheel to say, hey, I got to think about collectively how I show up in a customer's life, in a consumer's life. All we're doing now is saying, we still have to work in those teams of teams, and you have to have someone who's absolutely obsessed with the customer at the center. And if you're doing it well, like I have redesigned the group to have actually customer groups mapped back to customer sets so that that's all they think about. And then we apply the product and the features that best meet their needs. And they work with experts, centers of excellence, including whether that's growth, whether that's, media that's more above the line, upper funnel, whether that's comms, PR, partnerships, working in that fashion. I'm organized that way now while taking advantage sort of horizontally across of the technology that can speed everything up and have you be agile and moving in real time. And then again, using our tools is almost if you look at the schematic of the tech stack, it's almost as if our org maps up to it, where you've got this Gen Studio engine that's creating assets all the time and pushing them out and optimizing. So that, it's a simple way, but that reorganization and then using almost the tech stack to kind of model our org. The other thing I'll say in all of this is we have an in-house studio team, best in class. They're exceptional, as you might imagine. Most of them came to us after using our tools and trying other tools and still knowing what our points of difference are. But we have now creative technologists in those teams that then their whole job is to say, let me take the latest, plug it in, and then also ensure that through all of it, we always have the way to put brand standards in. So if you zoom out from all of this, if you've been in marketing for a while, the big thing, you have a heart for brand and value props and points of difference and all the things you learn when you're writing that perfect positioning statement. It's usually how we got into the craft. We love that carve out of that brand that stands for something. That still matters, even in an agentic world. We have built tools that you put the brand standards and guidelines in so that you do not lose that. Okay. And that is the thing that gives, no matter where you sit in the organization, especially the marketing organization, our teams can rest easier because they know no matter what technology is involved, we've got those standards plugged in, right? And that's ultimately what is your long-term growth driver, is who you stand for as a brand. And we've talked a lot about the pieces of the funnel and how you can't just live at the bottom of the funnel, even in this agentic world, that ultimately all of it is important and brand is important. And so that piece really matters.
I've heard you say that you believe we're entering the golden age of creativity.
I do.
So that's a very optimistic view of the world that we're in right now. And I like that. Tell us more about why you feel that way.
Look, there's going to be more and more AI that develops things, right? We're seeing what we call AI slop out there.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think in that environment, what has craft and intention and taking what's in your mind's eye and bringing it to life, even if you've used Gen AI to help that, accelerate that process or play with it. So Firefly, we have this ideation feature called boards, and you can play with it. It still is what I want. It still is what was in my mind's eye, and I'm just seeing it come to life. That human ingenuity and that human creativity paired with, if you want to use AI, great. If you don't, that's fine too. You're going to know what is authentic and unique and not AI slop. I believe that. And I believe authenticity is going to be your brand and trust is going to be your brand. That is going to fuel a whole democratization too of creativity. People who felt like they couldn't be creative now can be, using our products or believing that we can do anything. So I do believe we're entering a golden age of creativity. And you look at countries like India, who have always have rich cultural histories, and they have this entire creative class coming. And, we see our products doing extremely well there because they're just excited to be part of this economy. And the economy, just to keep pulling on the thread, it's like creators are running the economy. We know what we're seeing on YouTube and these channels. So that I do believe we're entering the golden age of creativity.
Now let's go back to your year one. You've talked about a lot of things that you're proud of, that are going well, that you're learning about. What's been tougher than you had imagined?
Oh, well, having LLMs, sort of come in and this belief that software is going to be eaten by AI, which I don't believe. And I believe that AI is an absolute tailwind for software. And, these times exist in our marketplace. I do think that question of everything surrounding LLMs, the capacity, the energy capacity being taken, the what is of the future of websites, how do we show up in that? I think that is hard, right? Because what you are doing as a leader during that is, you have a great strategy. I mean, we have a new mission. We have a corporate strategy with must wins that we're banking against. That, but your teams, they look out to their friends who are also running around with, this frenzy. And we call it on the enterprise side, we say going from AI hype or AI frenzy to impact, to driving outcomes. That I wouldn't have realized what a fever pitch that would hit this year. And keeping the teams, and less about that, but keeping the teams focused and energized as we get through it, which we will. For those of us who've lived the pinkslip.com era, that was hard. We got through it. We were better for it. You do have to disrupt yourself. I truly believe in that. Not just the company you're in, but yourself to get to the next side. And there are people who will love to do that and people who may not. And it's okay if you don't want to. We're here to help our customers. And so we are going to disrupt ourselves and disrupt, everything that is good to support our customers.
As a CMO, as a person, how has AI helped you be a more effective or more creative or a smarter leader? What counsel do you have from your personal habits?
Everybody should use it. I mean, we do. We encourage everybody to use it. In fact, when we're hiring, we look for people that are using it and using our AI tools. I mean, this is a really hard question for me to answer because I'm using our tools. And, I would say one of the things that I love is with Firefly, it's a one-stop application. It has all of the models at the best value. You can ideate, create, and then, I can do an Instagram post with my friends that is really unique and creative because I've applied some of the features and effects that Firefly allows me to do. But the idea that I can do that in rapid time and time is money today for people. The amount of information that people are getting is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
It's every day your feed is filled and you can be overwhelmed. And so for me, it's all about productivity. And, I mentioned the creativity, that goes without saying, but the productivity is how I've used it. And again, I would be using this if I was here or not, but it's just PDFs. There's 3 trillion PDFs in circulation today. Okay. Adobe Acrobat, great product. Now we have AI assistant, and I use that all the time. Summarize.
Yeah.
I'll get a PDF from anybody in the company and I'll summarize it, and it saves me so much time, and it's really good. And I can have it do it in a professor voice, or if I'm not, understanding it, in a 5th grader voice. So that's how I'm using it. And in doing so, I'm also dog fooding our material, which is great. But it's all about productivity for me, based on the time starvation that we have today as people.
You talked about your career path earlier in the show, and the companies, brands you work with are incredible, right? Nike, Visa, Amazon, Intuit, now Adobe. All of those companies have their leaders, their market leading companies, and they've stayed relevant over time. That's hard. It's really, really hard to stay relevant over decades and decades and decades. So having experienced all of those companies, some have bumps, but they're here.
Yeah.
And what's the key to that?
It just reinvention. Every single one of those brands hit periods where they needed to reinvent, stay true to the DNA of the company. Because if you do a knee-jerk, pivot, then it's not true and you'll lose people like that. But a reinvention, you have to disrupt yourself. And every single one of those brands has done it. Whether it's Amazon saying we got to do Prime because we have to penetrate more households and actually offer more value, to, Nike saying, look, we're going to go into more categories. I was there when we went into women like we hadn't done before. And it was originally called Nike Goddess. Then we changed it to Nike Women. So you reinvent based on the signals you're getting from customers, but also while staying true to your DNA. That is across all of these brands.
Yeah. You said early in your career, and you referenced this in our discussion today, you have to be disrupted. You have to be disrupted you have to be disrupted or be the one who disrupts, right?
Correct.
So you said you had learned that lesson early in your career. Can you talk about that lesson? What was that early in your career that was the wake-up call for you?
I think it's the theme for my life. I graduated from undergrad in Seattle. There were no jobs. And, it was magna cum laude, Phi Beta Kappa, couldn't find a job. So I volunteered to get marketing experience, which I thought I wanted to do because I was a pre-law major and there weren't, I had no background in marketing, but everything I knew about my pre-law classes was that human psyche and what makes people do, end up in jail versus not was so interesting, and what affected them to think, do, and feel differentently, which is what marketing's about. And so I wanted to do marketing. I had no experience. So I volunteered my time for free at Pike Place Market, which is a tourist attraction, just to get experience and bring, during the recession, local families in. And so I came up with an idea to draw in a local audience. I did that while working a night shift at a hospital to pay my rent. But I say this because that's disrupting yourself. Like, here I am, pre-law major, don't want to go to law school, but hey, I'm going to get this experience. What are you going to do? You're going to disrupt yourself. Start to get career experience. It starts feeling like I'm not getting anywhere. What do? Disrupt yourself, go to business school. So disrupting yourself is part of my DNA. It's, wrapped up in tenacity and grit, which I always say anybody who comes into a meeting with me, you may be the smartest person in the room, but if you're not tenacious and have grit and have resilience, it doesn't matter. You're not going to necessarily go to the heights you want to achieve because it's not easy all the time. It's just not. It's not a linear career path by any stretch of the means. Life isn't linear.
Tell us about that moment where you said, I don't want to be a lawyer. So I also, by the way, I kind of thought I was going to be a lawyer and then I didn't. So what was it that you said, I'm going to go into marketing instead? What was it? What happened in your life? I mean, did you meet someone? Did you read something? Did you just all of a sudden say, I don't want to be, I was, when I really thought about what a lawyer does, I said, I want more action. I want to be moving and, with culture. And that to me, I think would be kind of boring for me. Not that it's not important. I'm from a family of lawyers, but I made that decision. I'm going a different way. So tell me about yours.
So let me zoom out and say the reason I thought I wanted to be a lawyer was because growing up, there was a show on television called LA Law.
Yeah, sure.
And there was a woman in it.
Yeah. It's influenced other people. Yeah.
Susan Day.
Yeah.
And it was very rare at that time to see females in a television show. Mind you, there were, 3 major networks. This was not in a streaming era where you could, see a myriad of law shows, which I love them all. But this was one where you had a woman in a courtroom. She was in the room where it was happening. Hearken Hamilton, want to be in the room where it happens. And so I just thought, okay, well, then that's got to be it. I want to do that. I want to be in the room. I want to be in the conversations. And so from there, I thought, okay, then I have to go to law school. And while I loved the law classes, the pre-law classes that I took, they were the ones that fired me up were the ones about why people commit crimes, which is, might sound a little twisted, but it's, there's a psychology of that. Yep. What environment, what learnings, what affected them. And then you start to get into human behavior. And that's when you start to think about marketing. So it wasn't that I was like, it was more, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wanted to be in the room where it happened. I saw a show, therefore pre-law, but from there it was, okay, I think it's marketing. Let me go get experience and let me push through a recession, which is, something I'm good at is graduating in recessions. I did the same thing in business school and just go for it.
Yeah. So let's flip into the creative brief because I think I want to talk about sports a bit. I know we talked about the NFL to open the show, but I know this is a real passion point for yours. What's the story there? We talked about just a second ago, your transition from law into marketing. Why are you passionate about sports? What is it? What was the catalyst? What was the experience?
Well, for me personally, I'm a fan of sports. I've always been a runner and I've always been a skier and a hiker. So my entire sort of growth throughout life has been outdoors and getting outdoors, skiing, running, hiking has been part of it, mountain biking. And so I have a respect for the commitment that it takes to be really good at a sport, no matter what that sport is. So you put that personally, and you realize also just the passion verticals, as we would say, that exist within that. And then, then for me, you work at companies like a Nike and you see the community that sports builds and the fan base and that you can coalesce around something that is exciting, is community building. That's the spirit of sports. And what I love about sports too is now it's, women's sports, every kind of sport. The Olympics are happening right now. The vast array of sports that exist. There's something for everybody. For us then, at Adobe, and I've seen this in my career, is you tap into that and find your space in it. With Adobe, it's incredible brand. We can play in any space. You've got the biggest movie producers in the world calling us to create films. I mean, we were just at Sundance. We had an incredible activation where we have filmmakers who, lines around the corner to get to see our products and offerings, to, whether it's Fashion Week, you've got fashion designers who are using our software to create ideas, create their next line, then all the way to, for example, you were saying NFL. And with us, we've got knowing that passion of sports and knowing we can not only help the companies who are, whether it's Real Madrid or Premier League or NFL, who have to connect with their fans and need the software to do that, or it's a fan who just wants to connect with their friends who are fans or even fans of the other team by showing their own colors and using the team colors. There's something magical in that. And, with Adobe, we often say marketing and creativity equals Adobe magic. Now we're saying, hey, it's marketing, creativity, and AI is Adobe magic. And it is true. Like we are only bringing these fan experiences and how to customize through Express or use Firefly or even, listen to a Kelsey podcast and then get excited to see their what we call a PDF space on all the things that they're looking at as part of Acrobat. That's the power of sports and the connection personally that people have to it. So I think that's really what it is in a nutshell. The other thing I would just say is when we think about ingesting media, live sports has got to be, that and live, it's harder to get those live moments where people still come together. And that's the beauty of sports as well.
What are you still active in sports? Are you still mountain biking, skiing?
I am. I'm going a little slower than I used to, but I'm still doing it and enjoying it. I don't do it as much as I'd like. As I age, I'm doing more weights because bone density and, we have
I did
to think about
Pilates
those
this morning,
things.
so I'm with you.
Good. Little core strength. That's great.
Yeah, it's great. And I enjoy it. It's very relaxing too. Who has been the most influential business mentor in your life since you started this great career?
So not a business mentor, but my aunt was in Congress for 24 years. And she was she was a first mover. She helped pass the Family Medical Leave Act. And she did things that were really rare for a female to do in Congress during the time she was there. So she's always been an archetype for me of she's a relative, and she also showed fearless leadership while keeping a sense of humor. So she's without a doubt someone I've always thought of as a mentor.
And she was in what state?
Colorado.
Colorado.
Yeah. And she's since passed, but she did phenomenal things. So she's always been someone I've wanted to consider as I think about those times where you really have to have a voice and speak on behalf of, in her case, it was her constituents. In my case, it's my consumers and my customers. I have had such good fortune of working with so many incredible leaders who have also continued to play a role in how I think about leading and how I've done marketing. I had the good fortune of working for Antonio Lucio when I was at Visa. He clearly has gone on to do great things and left, quite a few of us as his disciples of the craft. And he's reinvented himself. I just recently talked to him at an event, and he talked about being quiet for a few years and thinking about pivoting HP and the changes he's made there. And, it really resonated with me. And, we talked a lot about self-disruption and disruption and how you have to do that, not only for a company, but for yourself. He's a great example of that, while staying true to the craft, because the key fundamentals that you and I learned are still true. That's not going to change no matter the technology. So the principles of the purchase funnel and the principles of a strong value prop and what a great brand is, those remain the same no matter what. So he's a great mentor there. I've worked for so many great leaders. And what I find you do is you also you see the things that you like and you take them. And then there's some things that everybody has that you just don't necessarily want to take on as a leader, and you just leave those behind, but you learn through that as well.
What was it about your aunt that made her so special?
She was fearless, but she also kept a sense of humor. She never didn't laugh at the end of the day. You got to have fun. These jobs are not, easy. At the same time, we're not doing brain surgery, back to patient zero. So we should have fun. Our teams want to have fun. We need to remember that. She did that in spades. She had a quick wit.
Yeah, if we're not having fun creating something for our customers, how are they expected to have fun with it or make use of it when it reaches them?
Yeah.
I think we undervalue that level of...
I really think we undervalue it often in technology too. I think we can get really serious about our own seriousness, and we can't do that. We need to remember that our customers want to have fun. They're looking for light. They're looking for joy. How do we bring that to them? And optimism. That's, again, talking about the Adobe brand and coming here. And an element I never want to lose is the optimism. And there's a human side of that is so critical to the DNA.
Lara, what's the first brand you remember making an impact on you as a young girl?
We did a podcast a long time ago, and I said Tab, okay, which I still love Tab.
Yeah.
What a wonderful drink. I can still think of the...
You staying with that answer?
No. You know what? Because I said that, I thought, he may ask me that. And actually, I was thinking about this because it's also winter and it's ski season. Is K2 is a ski brand. And growing up skiing and being a big skier, K2 is a brand, it's Bainbridge, Washington. I'm from Washington State. It was sort of part of that whole getting into that sport for me. There was also a ski called Pre-Skis. So those two. I will say one brand that I thought of, which is not a brand, but to me it's a brand, and having grown up in the Pacific Northwest in the 90s, Nirvana and Pearl Jam, those are brands for me.
Sure, of course.
So I do think of those almost as brands because they represent something timeless. They represent a unique carve out, a value prop. The way that a marketer thinks about it, maybe not necessarily what the classic sort of brand like the Tab would be, but that's another thing.
They've stood the test of time.
They have, both of them, and
clear what they stood for.
100%.
Yeah.
Great definition of a brand.
So, Lara, what are you looking forward to the balance of the year, either personally or professionally? And we'll end on that note.
Yeah, I think personally, I'm looking forward to continuing to make this brand stand for what it's always stood for, but be more relevant than ever, and not lose the human connection. So I think the professionally, having my teams continue to embrace where Gen AI is taking us, to take some of the things that we don't love and removing them, automating what is right to automate while staying on brand, using our tools like Firefly. Like, that is exciting stuff. I can get energized getting out of bed every day doing that. I think, personally, travel for me is the spark that keeps me alive and gives me energy and fuels my work. Because when you're experiencing different cultures, you think about how to solve complex problems in different ways. So for me, I think this next year I have a lot of travel planned that will help me, I think, be better at my job while still, getting fuel personally. So whether it's, work travel, I'll be visiting some offices that we have in Japan and Tokyo, in Sydney, India. Those are the trips that really energize me and bring me back with new energy, fueled to keep growing.
When you're not doing business trips, and I always love that too. What do you like vacations that are active or more quiet?
I like a mix.
Okay,
Jim, I like a mix. I'd like a little of beach time and a little get out there. Lately I'm really into going somewhere and learning about the history if I can, reading a historically relevant fiction. So yeah, always have a bucket list that I'm trying to knock off for a vacation, whether it's we did Namibia a couple of years ago, where we've done, the Canadian Rockies, Banff. We always have something that we're looking to do. It's also as a family, I have 2 boys in college now. So it's how you get everybody back in the same zone and get out. It works when they know they're getting a trip on mom and dad. So.
Yeah. Well, enjoy it now, because we did that with our kids a lot. They now have kids and it gets a little more complicated.
I'm sure. I hear that.
So enjoy it now.
I appreciate that. And I will definitely keep that in mind.
Well, Lara, thank you for this conversation. I so appreciate it. I think you and your company are just remarkable. I've loved following both of you over the years. Thank you for coming back on the show. But what a great call. I think you went from Intuit to Adobe, disrupting yourself sort of again, but having, I think you're in your zone is what I'm feeling from this conversation. And when I met you personally, after you made the decision, I think you're in the place that you want to be and need to be.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. It means a lot coming from you, Jim. And thanks for taking the time.